everyone for coming. It's great to see you. I'm Georgia Candro, and I'm going to do a wee talk about the background to myself being here, this housing idea I've got, and yeah, we'll just take it from there basically. So I moved here in 2018 in a wee camper van, and I couldn't find anywhere to live. I managed to rent for a few months, but the summer came and everyone got rented out for holiday accommodation, and my partner and I literally had to leave the area. And that was that summer of incredible sunshine, you know, the last absolutely amazing summer. And yeah, I couldn't be here because there wasn't anywhere for me to live. And I bought a property that's down in Cohousing. I'll show you pictures of it later. And it had been used as a residence for a couple, and they used the 2 wings for holiday accommodation. And having had the experience I'd had, and because I'd studied, when I'd studied at university, I'd studied geography, and I'd got really into housing, and I'd actually worked in social housing a little bit, and I'd got really interested in all sorts of stuff about housing, forms of housing, how important housing is. I felt really certain that no, I have personal first-hand knowledge that this place needs places for people to live. So I was like, no, I'm going to use those 2 buildings for long-term renting. So that was my entrance here. So as we've just been saying, I moved away really recently, but I still own that land, and I still have a real interest in housing and its importance, and I have a desire, a hope that that land actually may be of benefit to the community that I really love. So, as we all know, not only is there a lack of housing, there's also quite a shocking housing stock. You know, so these are, you know, extreme situations that a lot of us are living in. Those of us who have housing, even when you have a roof over your head, it may be a damp, mouldy, cold roof over your head. You don't really need me to tell you that. So years and years ago, I was living in Newcastle, and someone talked about setting up something called the Cohousing project, and I had no idea what it was. So I went along to the meeting, and I was really interested in this new thing I'd not heard of called cohousing. And that's going to be the basis of what I talk about. And I'm also going to say that I know that my vision for my land is not going to be everyone's cup of tea. It's not going to work for everyone. But there will be some people, I hope, who are like, yes, I'm really interested in that. That really works for me. And that's, you know, those are the people, be it people who are here today or people who come on board later. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I know my little project can't solve the housing crisis in this area and won't be up everyone's street. But my hope is it will be up some people's street, and they'll be happy if, you know, I've helped a handful of people in our area get housing. That would be great. So the basis of co-housing is that it's a housing development where, as well as having your own individual private house, complete private house or flat or, you know, whatever apartment, there is also a common house. So you've got your own kitchen, you've got your own dining room, and there's also a common house which usually might have a kitchen in it, might have a dining room. Depending on the size of a development, some of these places are really big, and they've got you know, they've got guest rooms and laundries and libraries and kids' rooms and shared gardens. You know, it gets really quite amazing. But the basics are that there's your own house or flat, and there's some shared amenities. And like I say, these developments are springing up everywhere. So I'll talk a bit about the place in Orkney, which is going to be just 6 wee houses and a common house. And there are places which are just like, you know, 30 houses and things like that, all very fancy. I'll show you some pictures. And the thing is, with this mix of the private and the public, it seems to be a mix that works for an awful lot of people. So someone like myself who lives on their own, maybe someone who's a bit elderly, from families, it really seems to work for families and young people. Like, everyone seems to get a lot from it because you have your own private space, and sometimes you get together and do things together. You get to share resources. The key to this is that it's the group of people who make this thing happen and who decide how they want to do it. So there are some places, I've read in Denmark, literally there will be a meal in the common house every night. And they have a rota, and you never have to go, nothing's obligatory, but if you want to, you can go. You might go once a month, you might go 3 times a week. Other co-housing communities are like, oh, we have a communal meal maybe once a week. You know, it's completely up to the people who live there, it's their community, they design it for themselves, right? There's no rules other than we do some things together and we do some things apart, you know? So for some people it's about not being isolated. For some people it's about like they're really keen environmentalists like myself. So historically these buildings are usually built to very, very high environmental specs, which means that you have like hardly any bills. So the running costs of living in somewhere like this are usually minimal. I was just told the other day, you might know this, apparently the Scottish Government has very recently announced that in a couple of years all new houses are going to have to be like passive house standards anyway, so incredibly high energy efficiency. So actually, it's places like this that have been at the forefront, like actually really at the forefront of development. So now all houses are going to be like what these guys have been doing, you know, for decades. So there's hardly any running costs for these houses, basically. Some people it's more philosophical. They believe in sharing things, you know. They believe some of these places have tool libraries. They believe in sharing resources. They believe in being neighbourly, and we're lucky. We have a lot of that happens naturally in our community anyway. But in an awful lot of places it doesn't, you know. Some people it's political. They really like, you know, they might have been housing association or council house tenants, and they really like the fact that they get an input into what happens in this place. They're in control. So they didn't, you know, so it's different for everyone. And really, the other key thing to say, I think, is that in terms of whether it's rented or owned or whatever, again, this is completely decided by the people who are making this happen. So there are co-housing communities that are owner-occupied. There are co-housing communities that have housing associations involved in them, and some of the units are rented through them. The one in Orkney is going to be the first, I think, certainly the first in Scotland, maybe the first in Britain, all rented. So they'll all be rented, those units. And another really exciting thing is some of these places have actually developed totally new models of, I guess the word is tenure. So they're not owner-occupied, they're not rented, they're other things. But they, you know, they've put years into working out these like legal models that work. So there's this place, a big development down in Leeds. They've created something called the Mutual Home Ownership Society. And there, they've got this system, fancy system, where everybody pays 35% of their income in rent. And they've got all the fancy algorithms and equations that it works. Everyone in that big development, no matter how much they earn, pays 35% of their income in rent. So, you know, this is incredibly flexible and creative because it's the people saying, hey, we want to get together and do this, and we're going to find the system that works for us to do this. So, let me show you some pictures. This is a development over in Moray, actually. This is some of the housing. You can see they're nice new houses. And then this is their wee common house, actually. So it's quite small, their common house. And you can see they've got shared gardens. And I remember I went there once and there was a whole group of people having, I didn't know at the time it was co-housing. I was just like, oh, look, there's people having lunch together out in the green. It seemed quite nice. This is an architect's, oh no, this is the village in Orkney. This is St Margaret's Hope in South Ronaldsay. And the one that's being planned there, this one that's called rental, is actually being planned by a group of elderly women who are really aware they don't want to have to go into care homes. So they're basically creating themselves a little new kind of housing. And this is what the architect's thing is. They think it's going to be like this. So it's just a row of houses. I think the one with the high roof is the common house. And they want to have hens. They're really excited about living next door to their friends, basically, and keeping hens. This is the one in Leeds, Lilac, which has the mutual home ownership scheme going on. See, they've got this big fancy pond. I think there's about 26 households in Lilac. This is one in Sheffield. So I wanted to show you they don't have to be new builds. Obviously, this is obviously a retrofit. Actually, over on the left, there is a fancy new extension they've put on it, but this seemed like you know, a really beautiful old building.
Whereabouts in Sheffield?
I don't know where it is.
Yeah, I'm just thinking because we was Sheffield. We're not far from Sheffield.
Yeah.
Just,
There's a couple
Yeah.
because this is another group in Sheffield. This is called Five Rivers, and this is them. This is about to, you know,
yeah.
have the diggers in to start.
Because I think there's one that's just started up in Bakewell.
Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
they're really getting around. So this one they're going to build is going to be flats. So there's owners, occupiers, and also they've got a housing cooperative involved who are going to rent some out. So again, it's a mix of tenure. And then what's this one? Oh, no, I'm going to show you that now. Yes, oh yeah, this wee picture in the corner, that's, I just thought it was really nice. That's a Lancaster's Cohousing's communal kitchen. This is a site in Inverkeithing in Fife that's being developed with the local council. This is a group of elderly women in London. They've got a big development. They've built this, so you can see they're terraced houses. In fact, semi-detached houses with quite big gardens. They made it happen. They made it happen. And this is a place in Cambridge, which has a really, really chronic housing shortage. It's called Marmalade Lane, and you can see there's quite a lot of families in this one. So I just wanted to show you the diversity, and of these places. And also there's the people. These are not like crazy radical people. This is the woman who's one of the group of the 4 or 5 quite elderly women in Orkney. And this is, you know, what she says. She says she lives in Shetland, she's a self-employed gardener and has read the meters. You know, she loves knitting and crochet and family history and Scottish dancing. She's not some crazy hippie. She's like a down-to-earth person who's wants to not have to move into a care home and leave her community. So I just really wanted to show that it's just normal people who are behind these developments, you know, and they're showing us that it's possible because they've been doing it. So I'm going to move on to saying a little bit about my little plot. But for anyone who doesn't know, right opposite the Pool U Hotel, what you see is a car park. This is my car park. And then down off the road, that's the garden at the back that literally backs right onto the loch. So it's the only house which has direct access onto the loch. And those are the houses. So currently there's 3 different houses. So this is my wee plot of land. And that building is currently uninhabitable because I had an escape of water from the roof when the pipes burst 2 winters ago. So that is out of action, but these 2 are still rented out long term. So there are people living there now. And we had some love, like when I was living there, it was just really lovely sharing that courtyard with people actually. Like we had total privacy, but sometimes, as happens around here again, you know, someone will have left some strawberries in the porch, or it was just all, you know, the kid would be running in the garden playing with my cat, and it was a really beautiful mix of everyone having our own space, but very easy opportunity to share and be together if we wanted. So my mission, basically, owning this place, is to turn this little site into a little co-housing community. And it may well be that this all gets pulled down because they're not in particularly good condition, but you know, the land is there, it's in the most wonderful site, and I would love it to be of benefit, basically. So yeah, I really want to use that site to create a really thriving residential community, but also that brings positive value to the wider community, because I think there are some examples I know where, well, I'll show you. Have I got photos of them here? No. Oh, this is where I get excited. So, just to go back a minute. This is my basic project, right? Do that with the land I have. I have a bit of an expanded vision, which is where I get excited about what other things could happen. And you might be aware that down on the shore, just in front of my house, so this is the gate of my house there, there's this completely crazy falling apart old boathouse or something that belongs to the estate who I've been trying to get a hold of for something like 4 years now to try and sort this out. You're nodding your head, yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. But I know it's really a sauna. that place is really a sauna, right? And I don't know if you know this, I didn't. I've just found out that currently across Scotland, there's like saunas are taking off everywhere. So I was down in Edinburgh last week, and I came across this, the Soul Water Sauna, parked up by the beach, that is fairly new and is like completely the cool thing. Everyone is at this sauna at the moment. And I was like, yeah, that could happen, you know. And why this ties in with the housing is because these are also potential sources of income, you know, like if it's going to take, and I'll come back onto that in a minute. There's also, so where, on this bit of land here, this bit of land here has been publicly stated to be up, like that they will gift it to the community. And also there's a whole bit of land here which is in the park that is totally overgrown, and that's also been said, they've said they'll gift it to the community. I have been trying to contact them about this for many years, but you know, it's adjacent to this land. This is the only building that it's adjacent to, and who knows, it could be that actually if, you know, if the group formed and made a good, you know, kind of a good case, that land could perhaps end up being part of this project as well. That would be the ideal, I think, because then there's potentially land for growing vegetables on the site. That's quite a big site, and running your own wheeler business. So that's my expanded vision, should we say. But the other thing I personally feel really key about, that I feel really cool, is in the common house, because obviously there has to be a common house for a co-housing scheme. That as well as whatever activities the group decide they'd like to have there, that there is some commitment to using it for community activities as well. So this is a picture, I don't know if anyone was there, not that one, was it September? And when the museum had the storytelling festival, and they turned the downstairs gallery into this wee lounge with a pretend fire and sofas, and it was like going into someone's granny's house in the 1960s. And what I thought was really interesting is I spent a bit of time there, and time again what I heard people say was, oh my goodness, this community so needs somewhere like this. Oh, what a shame, I wish the museum would leave it like this forever. You know, they went in there, everyone felt completely at home, and it was a beautiful meeting place. And you know, there was music events and all sorts of events there. And it reminded me, before COVID, when I was living in the middle house, I used to do all sorts of things in the house, because my big house, the middle house, had this really big living room, and we used to run music events, and we had some fun times in that room, didn't we? Yeah. And before COVID, my plan was always to actually make it like a public thing, a public space, but it never happened because COVID happened, and then, you know, everything changed. But I do have a vision that that common house will also have some, you know, be regularly available to some kind of community and arts activities. And I know there are places that do this and do this really well. So this is a picture of a room, they call it the Beautiful Room, in a really lovely housing, it's not housing development, but a place in Northumberland, rural Northumberland, a whole cluster of houses, again, people living in completely separate houses, but they have also, as well as their private houses, they have this beautiful space, and they have a shared kitchen and stuff, and they use it for their own events, they have their own parties there and stuff, but also people just come and hire it out, so they have an income from that, and it's a resource for the community. So, you know, it's sharing this public, and I think the heart of the co-housing is sharing the public and the private. And you share it in one level with the people that you live there with full time, and then there can be some places have this additional level of sometimes sharing it with the wider community. And that seems to benefit everyone. I'm willing to sell that site to a group of people who are committed to, you know, taking it forward as a co-housing site, and are willing to have that kind of community involvement sometimes. And interestingly for me, because one of the things I didn't say about myself is I've got a lot of experience facilitating groups, and I'm really happy to hold, like, whoever wants to get involved, to hold, like, to facilitate that group initially, to get some of the initial way. But when I was speaking to potential funders, so there are people like the Scottish Lands Trust and various different community funders, they pointed out something to me that I had not thought of in my naivety. They said, that's a conflict of interest. They said, if you're involved in both sides, we would not fund you. That group could not get any funding if you as the owner was also involved in trying to buy it. And I said, okay, right, so I actually can't take a particularly active role in this. I'm the seller. So even though it's like my heart's wish, it's not for me to take this forward in the future, really, in a big way. Unless there's private financing, right? It's the funders who would stop, potential funders who would say that's a conflict of interest for my involvement. What's really lovely about nearly all, if not all, of these co-housing groups is they are so keen to share their experience. They are so keen that other people don't go down the blind alleys that they had to go down and have learned from. Is that there's such lovely support out there. There's an organisation called Cohousing Scotland, and they're really supportive. But of course it's going to be a long journey. This isn't going to be a thing of people moving into their lovely warm houses next year. It's more like maybe 4 or so years down the line. Yeah, so I think that's the important take home really, is that, yeah, it will take time, effort and perseverance, but the outcome will be like a totally stable, beautiful, amazing home that's, yours forever, that's for local people. So the next steps basically is, obviously, we'll chat about it tonight if you have any questions. Let me know, just let me know if you're interested.